Welcome to the Josh Hall Web Design Show. Helping you build better websites and create a web design business that gives you freedom and a lifestyle you love.
Hey everybody, and welcome into the podcast. This is episode 117, and in this one we're going to talk about something that I'm not personally too savvy on, and that is ads. We're going to take a look, and we're going to kind of take a deep dive into what is working with ads and what is not working with ads here in 2021 and beyond. And my guest in this interview is somebody who is very well qualified for this talk, and it's one reason I wanted to bring somebody in who knows what the heck they're talking about with ads, because again, it's not something that I do much myself. In fact, I have very, very little experience with ads and none in my web design agency years, and very little with what I do with joshhall.co with my courses and stuff. So wanted to bring in somebody who knows a lot about this. This is Erik Huberman. He is the founder and CEO of Hawk Media, which is one of the fastest growing marketing consulting agencies in the US. So they've actually worked with brands like Verizon, Red Bull, among others, and they have at this point over 150 employees across multiple locations all over the U.S. So needless to say, he's got a lot of experience with building an agency all around ads. And what was interesting about this topic is that because I didn't really know too much about ads, it's more of a broad spectrum about what is working, what is not, and then also how to attract the right type of attention, which really, it was actually originally we were going to talk about attracting the right attention. But what I discovered that Erik and I did in this conversation is really take kind of a broad approach to ads in general. We talk about video versus blogging versus the type of different ads that you can do on Facebook versus LinkedIn and Instagram. And what we really get into, which I found super fascinating, was where your audience is and how to attract them depending on what platform you're on, which is something that I'm really working at right now. Now, I do want to say, Erik and I don't necessarily agree and see eye to eye on everything that we talk about in this interview. And one thing I'll point out right now that I still stand very firmly on is personal videos. Erik, as you'll find out, is not a fan of personal videos. He's also somebody who is quite busy and is running a very big growing agency. So it's a little bit different than me, who has more of a lifestyle approach with working, fairly low hours and having a family. So I love personal videos. Erik, not so much, and you'll hear why. And I actually found it was really interesting. I think it's great to talk with somebody who has maybe not opposing views, but different views on stuff. So I actually found this chat to be very enlightening, and I think you will too, particularly if you're interested in diving into more marketing and ads. Now, for those of you who are terrified of marketing and doing ads, kind of like me, luckily in web design, while I do encourage you think about this because you can definitely control more of your customer base with ads, one thing you can really do to avoid having to spend a lot on ads is to have a maintenance plan so you can get those lovely two words called recurring income. And if you don't have that, if you're thinking about starting a maintenance plan and a hosting plan for your clients, you don't know where to start, I would love to help you out with that. You can join my website maintenance plan course today, which is open for you right now. It's helped hundreds of students all over the world. I'll put a link in the show notes to that one, but you can check that out. I would love to help you start a maintenance plan of your own so you don't have to just rely on ads, but I do recommend you think about it and consider it, and you're going to hear how, why, and how to go about it here in this episode with my man, Erik Huberman. So here we go. Let's talk ads. Erik, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you on, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I'd love to start out, if you can let my audience know where you're based out of and what you do. Let me rephrase the question for you, because you're the CEO of Hawk Media, but what does your company do? So where you're based out of and what you do?
So currently based out of Santa Monica, though, when about July, we had to vote and said, do you guys want to ever go back to an office? And 84% of our team said no. So we went from being about 90% in LA and offices in New York, Boston, and Baltimore as well, to now about 50% in LA and people in 24 plus different states around the country in 7 months that it's been. So We're everywhere. But I am currently in LA. I just spent a month in Utah, and I'm spending another month after this month in Mexico. So we're jumping around because our whole business is virtual now, taking advantage of it, making it a good thing.
Oh, absolutely. That's the beauty about whether it's web design or digital media or anything. Yep. That is the beauty now.
Yeah, no, I mean, our clients have always been remote. Now we're remote for each other, and we figured it out. So it's gone really well. Yeah, in terms of what we do, so Hawk Media is basically an outsourced CMO and marketing team to companies. So we go into brands, identify the holes in their marketing team or strategy, and then we'll spin up different experts all a la carte month to month. So it could be an email marketer, a web designer, a Facebook marketer, Google marketer, et cetera. And the idea is we can go in, do what they need, what's needed, and then be super nimble and flexible along the way. So it can spin up and down as needed too. So our mission is accessibility to great marketing for everyone. The idea being a lot of companies have a very hard time identifying great marketers, great talent, great agencies, and we wanted to make it super easy and flexible to get really good talent and good people working on your company.
Awesome. Well, and I know we're going to dive into this idea of attention and how to get it in a very ADD, attention deficit type of world, which again, as I mentioned before we went live, very, very timely topic, particularly for my audience of web designers and entrepreneurs. So I'd love to start the conversation off here, Erik, with because I want to hear about the landscape, because I know you're in a lot of different channels and a lot of different markets. And most of my students, just for your reference, are going to focus on Facebook, probably a little bit of LinkedIn, a little bit of Instagram, depending. And then I'm a big proponent, and I've seen the power of two things for me that really have helped grow my business: podcasting and blogging. Those have been the biggies for me. So I would love to kick us off with where the landscape is right now in 2021. This interview will come out springtime 2021. Where are some of the most powerful channels at? I know it might depend on the industry, and maybe that's a broad question, but what have you seen have just been some of the most powerful channels that people have rolled with?
So I think that's going to be what changes in 2021, is the idea that there is a powerful or a couple powerful channels. I think what's going to happen now, and let me actually start with why. So in 2020 with COVID, excuse me, consumer purchases went from 13% online to 30% in just Q2 of 2020. It subsided a little bit, but not much. And so with that, all of the big CPG, automotive, et cetera, brands, everyone is realizing that online isn't just, it already passed, I think it was 2018 when the majority of ad spend went online versus traditional for the first time. Now it's like traditional is getting less and less valuable and digital is becoming the thing. The problem that has is for any small, medium business trying to compete, it's all in a bidding system. And as these big CPG companies and giant brands jump in, they can't compete on a price point because those big companies have so much distribution, so much lifetime value that they can spend a lot more on acquiring customers. And so to compete, you have to become much better at the full funnel. And this year, I think we're going to see a pretty large rise in advertising costs and customer acquisition costs. So finding ways to both increase your conversion rate, increase your lifetime value becomes the main focus. And that's always been a big focus of ours. But I think now more than ever, it's now not just going to make your company better, it's going to make your company actually survive or not. And so what I mean by that is doing things like email marketing, SMS, which is where we've placed a big bet in terms of, we have a venture side too. We would do a lot of investing. So we bet on a company called Postscript, and doing a ton of other using tools as well as chatbots, referral programs, everything to, again, increase your conversion rate, increase your lifetime value off the advertising you're doing becomes super important. I still believe Facebook and Google are the best places to digitally advertise, super iterative. Their ad products are really great. Which one you should spend more on really is where it depends on your industry or type of business.
Sure.
But I see TikTok being the next up and comer. We were the first official agency partner to TikTok. I think that because of the way, and this would be a lot deeper conversation, but the way that the platform works is you're just sitting there scrolling through random videos. And if they can get their targeting right on their ad platform so that you can target the right people, it's a perfect time to hit someone and say, hey, check this out. That's why Facebook and Instagram are so valuable. Whereas Twitter has struggled and YouTube has struggled and Snapchat has struggled on ads. They haven't because of the way that nature of the platform is used.
Gotcha. So that's a good overlay of the land for like the ad-based side of things. What about organic content?
Yep.
Because I don't do ads myself. It's something I might look into eventually, but I built my entire business organically, mostly through organic tutorials through YouTube and my podcast. How does that stack up against ads? I mean, I'm fascinated by how ads and organic can work in conjunction and how they kind of compete with each other. So what do you think about that? Obviously there's going to be a lot of different ways to go about things organically versus,
So a couple of clarifying questions. When did you start doing YouTube?
I started doing that in 2017, the end of 2017.
Okay. So you weren't like a first adopter. And
No.
How long did it take you before it really started to pick up?
It was probably about 6 months. Now, I don't know how much you know about me, Eric, but my niche is pretty small. So I teach, particularly on my YouTube, I teach web designers a lot of tips and tricks, and now have this web design show on my YouTube channel, but it's mainly for web designers using WordPress. And then there's a smaller niche in that, which is the Divi theme by Elegant Theme. So that's my primary audience. So it's kind of a niche within a niche, which is where I got some power and where I got some good authority. Yeah.
And I would say, but 6 months is the example, like organic can work really well. It just takes time. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't have that luxury. So like you waited 6 months, which by the way is really fast. That's great. So you did a good job there and were able to hit something that people wanted to see. Some companies take years to grow organically, or they can throw some money at it and you jumpstart it, because it's not like those, if you do a good job, it's not like those customers go away. So it's not like you have to keep doing it. A lot of times it can just be a jumpstart to get you the base you need to get going. So
that's a good point.
That's why like I spend money on paid ads, et cetera. And what we, have a big team that manages a lot of paid ads, hundreds of companies, is it's not that those companies don't have a good product, that there's not word of mouth, that there's not other ways they can get business. It's that the only one way you can control directly your growth is really paid ads, because organic, you're at the mercy of word of mouth. You're at the mercy of the algorithms of those platforms. You're at the mercy of a lot of other things. So when you want to control your destiny, that's where paid ads come in. That being said, there are some incredible brands that have grown organically.
Well, that's a really good point you make. I have heard that you have just much more control, like you just said, with the ad route. Whereas I find organic, just like you said, referral is, I've heard it kind of related to like rain. You know it's going to rain eventually, but you don't necessarily know when it's going to rain. So organic is a different approach. And I should say too, just for some context, my organic growth, I was running my own web design agency on the side. So I didn't have a need for my brand to blow up really quickly. But again, for me, it was honing on a certain niche that really helped. And I think, is that the focus that you would encourage people to have if they're doing both with ads and organic content? Is it focusing on a certain niche or trying to find the best type of people for the biggest ROI? What are your thoughts on that?
I think you always need to focus on a niche, but I think the niche needs to be redefined. That doesn't mean like what you just said about like, listen, it works for some people, but it's not necessary. Meaning like what you just said about focusing on a single theme from a specific designer for WordPress, like that's very niche. You could do every type of web platform out there for companies, but focus on an industry. Or you could do every type of web platform for any industry, but you're going to focus on a certain market segment or whatever it is. Having a focus, I think, is important. Having a mission, having a differentiator, having something that resonates is really important. But like our differentiator is our mission, which is accessibility to great marketing for everyone, which by nature means we're not niched down into any specific niche.
Sure.
But what we are is month-to-month outcome. We're differentiated in a different way than saying we're experts in automotive, which I actually think in a marketing standpoint is a mistake, because I think then marketing needs to be creative, needs to be innovative. And when you're doing the same industry over and over again, you just run the same playbook. None of them are going to be differentiated. They're all going to look the same. They're not going to get any real attention. So back to the attention thing.
Yeah, that's a good point. So as far as attention, we're in a society now, no matter where we are. I mean, I've got students from all over the world. It doesn't matter. Yep. You've got an attention span of about 2 seconds. So I'd love to ask you and pick your brain, since you've seen a lot of different types of ads across a lot of different platforms. What are some things that work well? I know video is more important than ever. I'm a big proponent for all of my students to be doing short videos, whether it's on social media or engaging videos to chat with people who have purchased, their products. Or a lot of times we're doing proposals or videos, on proposals to walk people through. It just adds such a more big element. Would you back that up and say in video is more important than ever? And then on top of that, what are some other ideas that have kind of helped initial conversions on all these different platforms?
So it's funny because I believe more personalization is more important than ever. Some people love video. I hate it. Like, because I don't have the time. I don't have time to like click your video and watch it. Like I'm on the phone 10 hours a day plus. I don't have time to listen to your video, which means you send that to me. I'll get to it in the next week, maybe, or by the time a week passes, I'll be like, yeah, I'm done. I don't want to deal with this. And so for me, email's better. Text is better. Because I can do it. I can multitask. I can deal with your email while I'm on a call or while I'm doing something else. And video, I have to listen to it, which, by the way, my biggest pet peeve, which is not a fair pet peeve, is voice memos. Like, do not send me a voice message. Like, I hate it. It's like, now, like, you expect me to like take a minute or two to listen to this versus just texting me. Like, just text me. Like, I don't need to hear your voice. And so that, by the way, that's me. Other people like it.
I don't like, to back you up, I don't like the voice messaging. I don't like that either. I'd much rather them just text it out or send me a video, one of those two.
Exactly. And so that part is, that's why I say that is, I think doing multiple things, you know, like trying different things with different people and having different sources is important in any type of marketing or sales, where it's like different people are going to respond to different messages, different forms of communication, different ways of doing things. And you need to try to customize it or have everything firing. Because if you send me a voice message and then a text, I'm just going to ignore the voice message, but I'll read the text. So now you've tried both. Maybe I like one or the other, and you've now got me. And so the idea to me is like, and I really do have a view on marketing in general like this, do it all, do everything you can, double down, and then keep adding to it. As your company grows, you can afford more resources, do more and more. Because a lot of people will like change things out and like try Facebook and then go to Google, or try voice messaging and then try text. Like, why not do both? Why not do it all? And it'll reach the people that it reaches, because people are different and unique in different ways, because not everybody books their calendar like I do.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting point I wanted to hit on with the video thing, because you and I differ in that, because I love videos. If one of my students sends me a video, I love it. But we're a little bit different as far as our schedules go. I have a little more time to dedicate to that, where I think you're interesting, Erik, because you're probably like a lot of my web design students' clients. They're busy. They've got a lot of stuff going on. So videos, I guess what I would say for those type of people is, like you just said, have both. Maybe have the video. Would you echo that? Have the video, but then also have it written out in case they don't watch the video, at least summarized?
Yeah, I think that can work, because then I don't feel obligated to watch your video. Like, it's almost, to me, and again, it's just because of the way I run my schedule. To me, it's slightly insulting. Like, oh, you're trying to sell me something, so now I need to take the time to watch your 3-minute video. Like, no, that's not going to happen. Versus like, you send me a quick text, like, I don't even think of that as an obligation. I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll read it. And so it makes it a lot easier for me. If the video is sitting there, I still will skip over it, but that's fine.
Well, that's interesting, because it's interesting to hear your approach, because for the web design clients that a lot of my students have, and I had for years, video blew them away. And it might just be the difference in industries. You're working with a lot of savvy folks to where, like, an auto mechanic, like you just talked about, if they're going to talk with 5 different web designers and one of the web designers sends them a video, they'll probably look at that. And I know this from experience. They're like, wow, you took the time to actually send me a video. It might also depend on the location too. I'm in Columbus, Ohio. A lot of people here want to work with people they know, like, and trust locally. So that personal element, like you're talking about, particularly in video, was huge for those local blue collar type of businesses. So that's an interesting point, though, because there are people who are really busy and might not want to sit through that, which is where brevity and keeping things short and concise is huge too. What, from an ad perspective, when it comes to this attention, what's the importance there? I mean, I imagine that's a big thing now, is you don't want to post a 20-minute video on Facebook. No one's going to watch that. What are your thoughts on that as far as keeping things concise and then to the right medium?
So, on the advertising side, it's really just articulating what you do in a way that grabs attention very, very, very fast. You said 2 seconds. I think that's probably right. So, if it's a video, the first 2 seconds of the video have to be super compelling. Again, it's not to close the deal. It's to get their attention so that they want to stick around. And people miss that. We talk about the one sentence. What's something like, how can you both explain your value and your differentiator in a sentence that at least gets people intrigued to learn more, and the right people? And I think people are really bad at that for the most part. I think people don't articulate what they do very well. And a lot of times you get the similes, where the Uber for X, where the Airbnb for Y, which that's okay. That's a start. But really, like, the problem with saying Uber for X, it's like, oh, so you're a bro culture that hates people and like screws over their drivers, but you're doing that for bicycles. Like, different people, and I say that because different people have different connotations of the brand. So when you do that, it's dangerous. So really figuring out your sort of one sentence. And the reason that's so important, let me articulate. So ours is, we're your outsourced CMO and marketing team. That's it. Got it. So, and then, oh, interesting. So you guys have like CMOs that work with companies and then have like a marketing team. Like, how does that work? That's all I need. I don't need them to be like, I understand your entire business now.
Yeah.
It's just like, I get it. And if it's a CEO or another marketing person goes, wait, let me hear about that. That's what I want. The reason that's important is if I keep going with where you're outsourced CMO marketing team or your outsourced CMO marketing team, when that person goes and talks to another person and goes, oh, and that person's going, I need marketing help. They go, oh, you should talk to Hawk Media. They're like an outsourced like CMO marketing team thing, which is how they re-articulate it, but they know what to say, so they feel comfortable saying it.
You know what? I like that, Eric. I hadn't thought about that, but that's probably a good advertising 101 type of exercise, is for everyone to say, if one of your best clients referred you and they could only refer you in one sentence, what would it be? What would they say? Exactly. That's probably a good way to think about it. I like that.
Exactly. And I always tell people, if you know anyone that needs marketing help, send it to me. They're like, oh, well, should they be what size and what this? No. I'll deal with that. If they need marketing help, send them to me. Like, that's it. And you keep it super simple. And that has been our biggest revenue driver from the beginning, is referrals by far. Word of mouth will always be the biggest driver for businesses. You can't afford to buy all your customers. You need word of mouth. And so you have to enable word of mouth. And so you talk about attention. Well, if a person sitting there talking to you about someone else, you have their attention. Like, that's how that works. So that part's super important. So then to get that initial attention is where you have to get a little more creative on the advertising content side and do things that grab the right person's attention. I think it's not hard to interrupt someone. Like, you have every avenue in the world to put something in front of someone these days, but you'll end up driving a bunch of the wrong customer if you don't do it in the right way. So how you do it is less important about like grab attention. People love to do these like shock value kind of emails or advertisements that like, yeah, you got my attention. And then I open it up and it's like, this has nothing to do with me. Like, now I hate you. So it's really about like focusing on what people need. And I think even though you have a short attention span, that more means get to the point than be, over the top with how you're doing it. One of my favorite little small anecdotes I got was from, I ran a company with a guy that was a former president of Disney Records, a guy named Mark Jaffe. And we were talking about Lady Gaga at the time, who it was like height of Lady Gaga's career. And he looked at me and he said, if you start your career screaming as loud as you can, where do you go from there? You can't scream any louder. So, and the idea was she was being so over the top with her meat dress and all that she can't go, like, she's going as crazy as she can. What's next? And then as we all see, nothing. I mean, she got the acting job and things like that, and she made enough money, don't get me wrong, but like her music career hasn't gone any bigger than it was in 2009.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And so same kind of thing with a brand. Like, you can try to do the like over the top crazy stunt, but if then you attract that customer that's looking for the over top crazy stunt. Good luck with the next one.
Right. Yeah. Because then if you land one, you're going to attract more like that too.
Exactly.
I know. Well said, Eric. I think that's a really, really valuable point, particularly now, because I've seen so many people, whether it's web designers or entrepreneurs or just businesses in general, dive right into the how and the type of ads they should do. But you're hitting the nail on the head with the idea of it's more important to know who the heck you want as a customer. Because not only can you decipher what type of platforms you need to go after, but that will absolutely cater the type of media you're going to put out, whether it's ads or organic content. I know for me, one of the biggest ways, so I started doing courses in 2018. When I launched my first course, which was on a website maintenance plan and how to create it, my family, we just went through the NICU with my first daughter for 56 days. We were in the newborn intensive care. And it was a very trying experience, but my maintenance plan helped get us through that. And I didn't use that as like a sales approach in a slimy way, but I was just very open about my journey. And a lot of my audience followed me. And I said, listen, guys, this thing like was a game changer for my family, and I want to help you build this as well. So it worked, but a lot of my audience were family people and doing the same kind of thing. So it's definitely a key point to know your audience and to know how to focus that. Now, okay, so we know our audience, we know what we should say in a sentence or two to get their attention, but here's the next point, or here's the next part. Where do we put this message out? And I would like to ask you 4 different avenues here.
Sure.
Facebook, YouTube, and then email and podcasting, because you have experience in all and you're doing podcasts yourself. Let's start with the social media, which I don't know if, I guess YouTube wouldn't be considered social media, but Facebook and YouTube, particularly for repurposing content. Let's say one of my students wants to do some authority type videos on anything about web design, and they want to do something on Facebook versus something on YouTube. What are your thoughts on the length of videos, and what are your thoughts on the type of content that should be on each? Because I've talked with a lot of different people, particularly about YouTube, and it's interesting to see what's working. I know what's worked for me, but I'd love to hear from you. If somebody's thinking about those two channels, what would you recommend?
So YouTube, I'm seeing longer and longer content and deep dives work better and better.
Okay.
People are looking for, complex, interesting, engaging content, so it doesn't need to be quick fire. YouTube, second biggest search engine on the planet, like it's a great place for organic content. So that's why it makes sense that you've had success with it. Mm-hmm. And if you're creating tutorials and those kind of videos, that's where people go. Like, how do I do this? Well, I'm just going to go to YouTube and figure it out. Like, that is a common practice now. And if you can actually be in a niche that's not oversaturated with a bunch of other videos, you can get some attention for the specific things you're an expert in. So I would say YouTube all day, because Facebook, I'm actually not a big fan of Facebook organically. I think if you're going to run ads, Facebook's incredible, but their ads are how they make money. They don't want it to be that powerful organic. Mm-hmm. And so, YouTube can't, their content is what keeps people on it, versus Facebook's a lot more bite-sized content. So they're not really in Facebook. Enough people follow enough people or are friends with enough people that they're not really worried about filling your news feed. Whereas YouTube wants to keep filling more and more videos the way they do it. So I think for organic content like that, you're way better off going to YouTube. And then on the contrary, if you're going to advertise, you're way better off going on Facebook, because the ad platform on Facebook is much more powerful and it's not as interruptive. If you get an ad on Facebook, it's just in your news feed. You can scroll right past it if you want it. It's not a big deal. YouTube, ads are annoying. Yeah. They're, that pre-roll ad where people are trying to watch a video and you're going to show them yours. It's a great way to just piss people off and make them hate your brand. Like I still like YouTube, I think just makes a lot of money because of the amount of usage on it, but like, it's not a great marketing platform. And maybe it'll get there. It's great for organic marketing, but for paid, not great.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I've heard the same thing. I had some folks who are deep into the Facebook ad side of thing, and they said the same thing. Facebook doesn't want to promote organic stuff. They want ads. Yeah. What about the difference between boosting and actually creating an ad through Ad Center? What are your thoughts on
boosting
that?
Boosting is a great way to get like unsavvy marketers just go blow some money. Like, there's just no reason to do that. Unless you're just, not trying to get a good return on your spend and you're just like, whatever, which happens, by the way. You just want to like throw some traffic behind an ad, but like you have the opportunity.
I'm not saying I would ever boost a post.
No.
Wink, wink. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, because that's what, like, when I got into it, I didn't really know the difference. I always thought boosting was an ad, and then it dawned on me, and then I realized, oh crap, it's actually something completely different.
Just, you're not picking your targeting, you're not getting into the weeds, you're not using all the details of the platform. So it's for like the layman to just throw some ad dollars behind something versus to actually leverage all the powerful tools that the ad platform has to get the best return on that boost. So that's the problem. And so you can do it. It's a shortcut. It's a shortcut to make less return off of it. So if you're just trying to...
Yeah. If you boost something for, like, say case study, let's say I release a podcast episode and I have a little snippet. If I boost that for $10 that week just to get more people, is that worth it for $10, or would it almost be better just to have it go out organically?
Two things. One, and this is where there's no confirmation on it, but I've heard that if you boost something lightly, it takes away all the organic reach because they want you to spend money. So you got to be really careful with accounts when you start boosting, because then they're like, great, you'll spend money on this. We're not going to give you anything organically because you'll spend. So.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that's interesting. All right. Give you something to think about. Email and podcasting. This is much more my style, as you can probably tell already. I like to talk and I like to get into stuff in detail. So podcasting suits me really well. Before we get into that, though, I want to talk about email, because this has been the biggest conversion tool for me. Yep. As somebody who's seen a lot of different ads and you're working with a lot of different companies, where's the emphasis on email, and what have you seen work well on email?
Yeah, email, I've been doing this for over a decade, is as effective as it ever was. Not more, not less, just the same, which it's been about 25% of, revenue for e-commerce brands for the past decade. Like, it's a big channel. And as you said, it drives conversion, it drives engagement, it's an owned channel. So you're not worried about someone else's algorithm. Maybe Gmail changes the inbox a little bit and that throws you off, but like there's ways to work with that. Mm-hmm. Email marketing is hyper powerful. And so yeah, I'm a big proponent of email. I think it's still a great channel. And similar to what I talked about before, I think SMS is about 10 times as effective as email. It's crazy how much better it is, but it's similar to what I said before. Do both. Like, you don't need to do one or the other. And And so other than that, there's not really anything that has come to, sort of claim the belt. Email is really the best conversion tool, the best engagement tool, the best lifetime value tool out there.
Yeah. Now, with the idea of sending something to both, an email campaign could look way different than an SMS. So do you have a lot of different strategies? Let's say you have a big, sales email that you really worked through and really, worked on the nitty gritty with the content. For the SMS side, would you just kind of take the pain points or just the outline of it? Or do you, I guess the question is, how do you multi-purpose content that's a big email versus a text?
I don't. It's a completely different channel. I look at text as more of like a proactive customer service, a way to engage and have a communication tool, not just sending a blast. So the way I would do that is a check-in, like, hope you've been well, just wanted to shoot you a text, just published our great new piece of content. We sent it out in an email too, but you can check it out at this link. Something like that.
Okay. Very cool. That's good to know. Yeah. I don't really have too many students doing that, but I have seen it work for some people. So it seems like it's getting more.
Well, it's just
popular.
much more personal. It's on their phone.
Yeah. And it's true. You said it. I mean, that's probably like the most surefire way to get in front of somebody is a text over anything, I would imagine. I can't imagine anything getting right to somebody, more than a text. Let's talk about podcasts, man. You know my thoughts on it already, but for you, why a podcast and how has it worked for you?
So I've taken a very different approach to my podcast than I think a lot of people do. I don't do it to build an audience. And I think like I will inherently, but I'm doing it to connect with the person on the other end of the mic. Like I'm the people I'm interviewing like this. My motivation for my podcast was I have all these amazing people that I have contact with that I see around, that we talk once in a while, but I've never been able to sit down and talk to some of these amazing people for 45 minutes, an hour, whatever it is. And they probably have really good stories of how they got where they are. And so I'm going to do something like, I want to know about their origin stories. I want to connect with these people. And, maybe it turns into something more, who knows? But either way, it'd be really cool to get some of these amazing people I've been able to connect with to like hear more of their story. And I bet other people would be interested too, which is why it's not a phone call. Also, it's not a phone call because if I call someone or I email someone and say, hey, let's get out on the phone for 45 minutes so you can tell me your life story, they'd be like, yeah, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, right.
But if I say, hey, you want to come on my podcast and tell your origin story? The answer has been yes. And so the guests I've had are incredible. And it's really because I think the term podcast pushes it a little bit, and then you get to connect with these amazing people. And I do believe that over time, this is going to pick up a lot of steam because of the type of guests we've been able to get. But the original launch wasn't anything crazy because it's a noisy space right now. It's not really like, I don't believe that my podcast is going to end up being like the biggest driver for my business by any means. Oh, sorry.
Oh, you're fine. Well, that's an interesting take on it because I feel you. That's almost one of the main reasons I did it as well because I already had an audience. So I didn't start my podcast to build an audience. I did it to two things: to do exactly what you said, to meet people and kind of bring my tribe together. Because I met all these amazing people. I'm like, gosh, there were times where I'd have a conversation with somebody. And I'm like, man, why didn't we record that? That was so good. We should have, like, somebody else needs to hear this. So I wanted to do that. Yeah. And then I wanted to engage my students. And what's been really interesting, and I don't know if you've seen this as well, maybe not with your business directly, but with some of your clients. So I have a YouTube channel. My two biggest things are my YouTube channel and my podcast. The podcast has brought in business-minded people. My YouTube channel brings in web designers wanting to learn web design and Divi tricks. So it's been really interesting. The majority of my course sales now, probably like, I'd say confidently 75% or more comes from my podcast because they're into it. It's built that likability and trust with my audience and then listening to me every week over and over. And it's been huge, man. It's been a huge converter. And I think, would you echo that if somebody wants to start a podcast, it should be in conjunction with some of these other methods as well, depending on the industry?
Well, it depends. I have a friend named Jordan Harbinger that has a top 10 podcast. That's his business. So like, you don't have to have it in conjunction with anything else. You can just, run a podcast with Lewis House, another guy that like, that's his main thing. Then he created other things in conjunction, but you can go straight for the podcast. And I mean, Joe Rogan, like they exist. If you want to be a podcaster, you can be a podcaster. It's hard. It's more and more competitive, but you can do that. It's really, and what I've seen, it's really about the guests and the consistency.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it really does open doors. Like I don't know if you saw this yesterday. At the time of recording this, I just launched my 100th episode, and it was with Pat Flynn, world-class entrepreneur. And I would never have got a chance to chat with him one-on-one if I didn't have a podcast. So it really does open up a lot of different doors, and it can be really great. So very cool. But it's all about the attention. I like the approach you have with attention being just that. Getting the attention, not necessarily making the sale right away. You mentioned consistency, frequency. With ads across all platforms, how important is that? I mean, are all these platforms, I would imagine, and I'm not an ad guy, so I don't know. I would imagine they would probably favor people who invest more and do it more often. Have you seen that work for ads? The more you do it, the better it gets, kind of thing?
No, some people are just not going to be good at it. It's kind of like, if the more I played football, I'm not going to be any better. I'm just not a natural born football player. So no, I do. Well, listen, you get better, but you don't necessarily get good. Okay. I guess is the point. So time, practice improves generally, but that doesn't mean if you're starting at a low baseline, might not be the thing. Like there is a natural ability and natural talent, or I guess maybe it's not natural, but there's some type of upbringing, et cetera, that gets people to a point where it's like they're going to be probably pretty decent at this stuff. But I think, listen, practice can make you better. But I also believe focus on what you're good at. I think a lot of people, because of the ease of accessibility to Facebook as a platform, will jump in and say I'll just run my own ads, and it's usually a really big mistake.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, honestly, if you're terrible at something, you do it over and over, you might get a little bit better, but you do have to do a lot of work to really make it work. And I think for ad platforms, I think about the podcast, for example, if I did a terrible job at the podcast, I could do it over and over, but I'm not going to grow my audience if it's really bad. Whereas if it gets better and better, it's gonna get a more organic reach. And I was just curious about that with ads, because obviously ads are going to favor people who know the platform and do it well. But I was curious about those people who do it well, if some of these platforms do favor them, because if they realize, this person spends a lot, are there any algorithms that track that? Do you know of, or is it pretty even for everyone to, as long as they do it well, to get a good reach when it comes to ads?
Reach pretty even. It's more your click-through rate, your conversion rate, and all the other things that go into the fallacy is that you can just go run Facebook ads and that'll drive revenue. If you're not doing email, SMS, a great website, all the funnel stuff, you're going to lose. And it is lose because it's based on a bidding system. You're competing with everyone else spending money on that platform, not competing with companies like yourself. I'm not talking about your competitors. On Facebook, you're targeting women between 35 and 42 in metropolitan areas that have an average income of over $150,000 a year, just as a target sense. Okay. Oh, and that are active. Great. You and every activewear brand and every workout machine and every smoothie shop, and it's not your competitors in the sense of they make the same product as you. It's anyone trying to reach that same audience. We talked about, this attention deficit world. Yeah. Everyone you're trying to reach out to is getting reached out by 1 billion people. And so if you're not doing a great job on creative and on that targeting too, because you've got to target the right person that actually is going to be interested. If you're a, pie company and you're targeting active, and you're not healthy at all, and you're targeting health-minded people, probably a bad move. And that's a simple one. But there's a lot of companies that confuse their brand identity with their target market. Their brand is perfect example. Shoe Dazzle. Their spokesperson originally was Kim Kardashian, and they stood for that LA style, fashionista, stylist, in the know kind of person. That was their brand identity. Their customer, their most concentrated customer, was a late 40s African-American woman from the South. And the reason for that is apparently their product, along with their brand positioning, resonated with that customer the most as an aspiration. That's just how it works. And so people confuse that, where they go, well, I'm this and my company stands for this, so I'm going to target other people like it. People buy things because of aspiration. So if let's say again, you're Kim Kardashian, you're standing for the fashionista in LA. Well, if I'm already an LA fashionista, I'm not going to give a shit, because you're not going to help me do anything. I'm already there. I'm already an LA fashionista. Sure. Why do I need your company? Yeah. So it's all the people that wish they were LA fashionistas that are going to be, that's going to resonate with. And that's marketing 101, so to speak, but it's what a lot of people miss when it comes to this targeting stuff.
Again, honing in on that idea and point of knowing your audience and making sure your message is in front of the right people, because you said it earlier, Erik, you could get attention, but if it's from the wrong person, what's the value there? It's not worth it.
And again, it's not just knowing, it's understanding that your brand identity and your audience are different. Because that's where I think a lot of founders have problems, is not getting the difference. And it really takes explaining it.
Yeah.
Because we hear it from our own clients, like, that's not my customer. My customer is this. It's like, no, that's your brand identity. Your customer is not that.
Gotcha.
We're targeting your customer because that's what we do. We analyze your customer base and figure out other people like them.
Are there some practical tips on how to figure out where your customers are as far as what platforms they're on? I mean, I know there's for me personally as a web designer, there's a lot of ways to go about that with SEO, data related research. But for you guys from ads, like, I mean, there's the common sense approach. Like, if you're going to have a women's brand, Instagram and some of these others might be good. But for me, web designers are not on Instagram much. They're on Facebook primarily, some on LinkedIn.
A huge fallacy there. And I appreciate you saying it, but a huge fallacy. I don't know what the daily usage is on Instagram, but I'm guessing it's around 1 billion people.
Oh.
Everyone's on Instagram. Everyone's on Facebook. People try to generalize and it comes from a good place, which is like, I want to say old school, because it's like you're talking a decade and calling it old school, but basically big creative agencies, big agencies, they looked at where their audience was traditionally. Like, my audience is watching Bravo, not Spike TV, whatever it is. That's how they used to think about it. Now, Google, Facebook, Instagram, everyone's on there. I don't feel like millennials, Gen Z, Gen X, baby boomers, whatever, like men, women, everything, they're all on those platforms. And so that the issue isn't trying to find where your audience is and picking that platform anymore. It's the context in which they're receiving. Yeah.
And you know what? Hey, look, I appreciate you calling me out on that, because that's an interesting point. What's interesting about that is, I mean, practically I know everyone's on Instagram, but I guess what I probably should have said there is the usage is different when they're on there versus when they're on Facebook. Because when they're on Facebook, particularly in the Divi community and WordPress community, people are highly engaged on Facebook.
Yeah.
There are Facebook groups, they're helping. Whereas Instagram, it's personal time. Now, I definitely agree. I'm sure that would probably take a different type of approach from an app perspective. So that makes sense. And
it could be very visual. So if you're trying to attract web designers and you're showing really incredible, like a quick video of an incredibly designed and syntax or parallaxed, new theme that you're launching, Instagram would be a good place to put that. But you have to change the type of creative you're doing based on what you just said.
And that's a good point, because I didn't really think about that. But just because it's the same type of person, we are different on the different types of platforms we're on. Exactly. You're in a different mindset on YouTube than you are on Facebook versus Instagram. So I guess that's a really good way to kind of figure out what kind of content you're going to do on each, which again goes back to attention, and also what type of attention you have on those type of platforms.
And I think
so it's interesting.
You just brought up something else, which is also don't spread yourself too thin, because it does take a lot of detail to do these things right. It may make sense to just do YouTube for a while until you can ramp up enough to have help to go do these other platforms, and not try to do everything lightly, but go deep on one. This can make sense in terms of the awareness side of things.
Well, and I'm glad you said that, because look, you and me, I think, are wired a little differently just with our type of personality. I don't want to do too much. So I feel like you could probably handle 10 different things at once and be fine. For me, focusing on podcast, YouTube, a little bit of Facebook has been fine. That's one reason I haven't done Instagram, is I'm just like, I just don't know if I have the bandwidth right now.
It's funny. I've had this recent, and it's a whole side tangent, but I think it's a good example. Have you seen NFTs? These new like crypto art pieces? It's like taking blockchain and crypto and creating art out of it. And they're going crazy. Like Blau, the DJ, just sold one for like $3.5 million. And they're literally like crypto art. And they're stupid little things. People are making a ton of money. A bunch of my very seasoned, intelligent friends told me to jump into it. I started looking into it, and like to buy these like little pixelated heads right now called crypto punks, it's like 40 grand. Okay. And I'm like, and they're all convinced it's going to millions. And the answer is maybe it is. I missed Bitcoin. I got told to buy Bitcoin at $8 a coin and just put 10 grand into it back in 2012. Oops. Anyways, the point being, I also can't spend the time to learn enough about this to be able to have an edge. I have plenty of investment avenues that I make good money in. I'm going to stick to what I'm doing, because there's no, I don't have a reason to get out of that right now. These are all, and so you end up chasing shiny objects in investing, and in which I look at marketing investing very similar in the way you look at a portfolio strategy, et cetera. And so sometimes it's like, if you're not going to have the time to really go deep into it, don't dabble. Dabble is where you just lose money. So just don't go there.
Well, I have one final question for you, but that was the perfect segue to, bring attention to your type of agency. And that's what I've realized. I don't have the bandwidth to do everything, so I'm going to hire people who are really good at what they do to help out. So you guys are really good at ads. You have a pulse on all this kind of stuff. So where would you like my audience to go to find out more about you, Erik, and potentially either collaborate with you, or I'm sure a lot of my web designers have clients and they're not handling this stuff. They don't want ads, which look, social media strategy is a lot different than just ads in general too. So where would you like my audience to go to find more about you and potentially hit you up?
Yeah, we love partnering with web agencies, so feel free to reach out. For me, it's just @/Erik Huberman on every social channel. And if you want to just jump into Hawk Media, just hawkmedia.com. If you need help on marketing, that's easy, as well as if you want to partner up. We have a really robust partnership ecosystem and program, so happy to look at partnerships.
Cool. We'll have everything linked in the show notes. So last question for you. A little bit ago, you mentioned that ads, anything attention related, is just one piece of the puzzle. Yep. And shocker, as a web designer, I'm going to ask you about the importance of websites nowadays. Yep. Where do you stand on that?
And it's incredibly important. So, I mean, that's where they actually convert. So we're actually coming out with a book later this year called The Hawk Method, and it's how we look at marketing. And I alluded to this a little bit, but we look at it in three categories and kind of three pillars: awareness, nurturing, and trust. Awareness being, how do I get new attention to my brand that no one's ever seen it? Usually advertising, PR, those kind of things. Nurturing are all the things you do between when they first become aware of you and they actually convert. Website, big part of nurturing, because that's where I'm actually going to land, where I'm going to assess how, your brand. It's also trust. You can have testimonials, case studies, press, all these things that help build that trust, because 75% of people won't buy from a company they don't inherently trust. So if you don't do a good job there, they're just going to leave. So super important to have that set up so that and you have to have it be very focused. Websites that are like, I see what people build websites that are like business cards, where it's like, this is who we are. It's a brochure. It's like, right. That's pointless. It's got to be a funnel. It's got to have a purpose. What are you trying to get out of that website? And usually it's a conversion or a lead or something along those lines, and be very focused on that. And then, website's critical. Site speed alone can help change the dynamic in a company significantly. Yeah. We watched a company their conversions dropped 8x. They had 8x less conversions because they screwed up their site and it was loading improperly. So, well, good stuff there. Do you guys get clients who have terrible websites but want to spend a lot with you? And if that happens, what do you say? Like, will you take on a company like that? Or? Well, we do have a web team too, but the answer is no. We won't. We don't want to market shitty websites. We do everything we can to avoid that. Sometimes we do. They say, we don't care. This is what we want to do. It's you or someone else. And we'll be like, all right, we'll try it, but we're going to be very clear on what we expect. Gotcha. And we've also been proven wrong. I've had websites come in that I thought were complete crap and they convert like crazy. So we also try not to be a gatekeeper. That's a big part of it, but we do try to give advice there. Yeah. Well, I know digital marketing agencies that have taken people and they didn't have a website, which is just... Yeah, it's wild. So I appreciate that you guys are stand up about the entire process. Well, no, we're month to month. We'll just get fired in a month when their ads don't perform. It's not a good thing for us. So yeah. Awesome, Erik, man. Thanks for your time. I know you're a busy dude, but this was a fun chat. Very outside of my realm of expertise, so I learned a lot. I hope you had fun, man. Yeah, no, I had a great time. Thank you for having me. Awesome. Cheers. Hey guys and gals, just wanted to pop in with a couple things before you head out. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to this podcast. I would love to hear your feedback, and it will also help other web designers find the show. Be sure to check out the show notes for this episode. Just go to joshhall.co, click on podcasts, and search this episode number, and you'll find all the links, descriptions, and resources we talked about. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, and you'll be notified when the next episode is live. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode.